We welcome you to another edition of Snap the Pigskin. Hello, everybody. Championship weekend is over. The Super Bowl just a couple weeks ahead. I'm Noah Clark, joined by Kedrick Stumbris. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to recap Conference Championship weekend. The Eagles throttling the Commanders in a very, very dominant win to go to the Super Bowl. We're going to break that down. We'll break down the Chiefs and their three-peat dream continues, beating the Bills to go to their third consecutive Super Bowl. Talk a little bit about Saquon Barkley because he's having quite the year, and is it enough to consider him an MVP candidate? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then coaching hires. The NFL coaching cycle is winding down, and we have some of our head coaches on new teams, and also bringing home the bacon. No pigskin picks, though, this week. So this should be a fun show. Kedrick, it's good to see you. Good to hear your voice. How are things over in good old Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Not bad.
The offense comes alive this week.
Oh, my goodness.
It's time. Time.
Oh, my gosh. You've said that for how many weeks?
I don't really believe it at this point. Chiefs by 3. The Chiefs kick a walk-off field goal to win it.
Oh, man.
And everyone's favorite, Harrison Butker, gets all the glory. It's been a big week for Harrison Butker. Big week for Harrison Butker, indeed. Of course, you just listened to or watched on YouTube audio from last week's episode where I begrudgingly picked the Kansas City Chiefs to advance to the Super Bowl again, and somehow had the scripts
perfect
much on point there. Not quite a walk-off field goal, but a game-winning field goal nonetheless. A win by 3 and 368 yards of offense by the Kansas City Chiefs. They did it.
Bravo.
The offense came alive.
Bravo. I give you your flowers, sir.
No, I did not know I was going to put that in here.
No, I did not. That was like a sprung last second. Oh, but we'll talk about that on second down.
We can't do all that and do that on second down. That's moving up. That's top of the drive. Right
so
here.
that's top of the drive here.
This is unreal. What just happened to Buffalo? Not that Buffalo was a complete team. Not that Buffalo was the best team in the AFC this year. I think that was Baltimore. I think that was pretty clearly Baltimore. They got at the wrong time. They fumbled at the wrong time. They were the better team down in the divisional round over the Bills, but couldn't make it happen. The Bills took advantage, and nonetheless, we have Kansas City returning to the Super Bowl again because they managed to score 30.
First time all season.
Finally, they managed to score 30. And that's what they were going to need to do to get by this Bills team. Unbelievable.
I can't believe that they actually won. Like, Josh Allen, I thought that there was going to be one legacy drive left in him, and it ended up not happening once again.
Oh, it did. Our good friend, Jack Goods, as the Buffalo went into that legacy drive to try to take the lead, posted on the website formerly known as Twitter, legacy drive, go win the game. 45 minutes later, he quote tweets himself and says, "It was a legacy drive. They are losers." Oh, man. Born and raised Buffalo sports fan. Just going through it.
There's been a couple out there, too.
Oh.
I mean, I know on the broadcast, I think Tony Romo said that like the Chiefs traded with the Bills to get Patrick Mahomes in the draft. And they did it, and they did it this past year again to get Xavier Worthy. And so like, oh man, talk about bad luck from the Bills.
Not that Worthy had, a dynamite game in this game.
He didn't have
two catches for 16 yards.
He didn't have a championship worthy game. Ha 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 ha.
Sure.
Okay. I will with the Chiefs.
It was six catches for 85 yards. I was looking at rushing statistics for whatever reason. No, who stood out to you in this game?
Who stood out to me? I'm thinking that you're going to be. I'm hoping that you'll be with me on this. Chiefs defense, man. Chiefs defense stood out again. I want to give it to Patrick Mahomes as well. I think there were some moments in this game where he looked like what we have been waiting to see all season long. The Patrick Mahomes that has won back-to-back Super Bowls, being able to move out of the pocket, being able to extend plays, being able to move the ball quickly down the field, and the offense looking unstoppable as ever. I thought that Mahomes played really well. He stood out to me on the offensive side. You look at the defensive side too. This was kind of a test of if the Bills offense can score against the Chiefs defense. While that was the case and they gave up, 29 points, they got stops when they needed to get stops.
Yeah.
The big 4th down and 1 sneak on Josh Allen that was short, which may or may not have counted, but you never know. The stop on that last drive for the Bills to ultimately ice the game. They had a couple stops, that was probably a big one. They had, those 2 stops were pretty key. And I just think you look at it, man, the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo, like they just keep making magic happen. But give credit to the Chiefs offense. They were kind of the ones that stepped up in this game when it mattered most. Like the 3rd down to Samaje Perine to end it. That was a big one. All in all, like it was just an overall good performance from the Chiefs. A classic Chiefs performance.
Yeah, I think what really stands out to me is for the most part, either the Bills were totally stopped, like 3 and out for 4 plays and out pretty much, or they got a touchdown. The only exception to that was the one drive early in the game that put Buffalo on the board where they took 10 plays just to get 35 yards. Was kind of the encapsulation of, all right, Kansas City, you go out, you take a lead right after, like the first 2 drives of the game for Buffalo, the Chiefs defense made them work for it, man.
Oh yeah.
3 and out to open the game. Then Patrick Mahomes goes down 90 yards, 9 plays, and the Chiefs offense to put him on the board up 7-0. The defense goes right back out there, allows a field goal, but it's a 10-play drive over 5 minutes long in which Buffalo only gets 35 yards. They had to work for that field goal. And it kind of set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. Not that Buffalo wasn't able to take big drives after the very next was, another 10-play drive, 7.5 minutes for a touchdown, over 70 yards. But like it's that every down to beat this Chiefs team. On top of the fact that just in the back of your mind, even though he has not done it all year, basically until this game, that Andy Reid can dial up something for you and just take you to task. That's always in the back of every guy. You will not convince me it's not in the back of every team's mind when you play this Chiefs team, regardless.
Oh yeah.
When you combine that with the fact that you have to work your tail off for every single yard against what is a top 3 defense in the league, man, this Chiefs team is hard to beat.
They are extremely hard to beat. That's why they're the class of the AFC and maybe the class of the NFL. I mean, it was like Buffalo had to work for some yards. Like it felt like every 3rd down was massive for the Bills because you felt like if they did not get a first down to keep the drive going. Kansas City's just going to walk on down and just go right in and score. I mean, that's how it felt. Because, I mean, Kansas City, their offense was clicking on a couple drives where they put together, a string of just really good first down plays and second down plays to get it to where it's a third and manageable, or they picked up the first down. And the other thing I think that has to be addressed too here is Patrick Mahomes, dude, looked so mobile, which you don't see that a lot from him as much. And
Not
in
this year,
at least not this year. Right. And this year, and in this game, like, dude, he was moving, like he was schmoving. And the touchdown to take the lead late in the fourth is ultimately what, makes this game so interesting, is because we had not seen the offense really kind of put the Chiefs defense on its shoulders when it needed to. And they finally did it with Mahomes' legs. And it was a really good play. Like it was a play action bootleg out, and Mahomes rolls out and just walks it in for the touchdown. Like, those are the things that, like you said, like if, with Andy Reid, like he knows how to dial up some play calls for the right moment. And that was a big play. That was a big play call when they needed it.
Yeah, you're right. When you talk about how every third down just felt massive, particularly when Buffalo was on the field, in all but one drive that Buffalo took to score, including that 10-play field goal drive, right? Every single one of those drives, it required multiple third or fourth down conversions for them to get on the board. There was only one drive in which they scored where they didn't have to convert more than once.
Like, I mean, like you look at it, the drive before Kansas City went down to take the lead, like you look at it, they had 2 fourth downs that they had to convert, and they converted both of them. And the last fourth down they had to convert ended up being a touchdown. And then on top of that, they had to convert the 2-point conversion. And even that still was like,
it's one of those things that it's this game in that script is going to be in the back of your mind when we go and watch that defense against the Eagles offense in 2 weeks, where the Eagles are always in 4-down territory with Jalen Hurts, similar to how the Bills are with Josh Allen, but the Eagles can do it just a little bit better, maybe. And maybe they just get a little bit better of a result against this Kansas City defense. But that's what I am looking for 2 weeks from now compared to what we just watched in this game. I think it'll just be a very similar script where, all right, gonna get you to later downs. Which of these teams is going to be able to stand up? Because man, that's such a fun matchup.
This is going to be a very exciting matchup. And remember the first time these two teams met in the Super Bowl.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I there's like all this online chatter that nobody wants to watch this.
Yes,
dude. I've never been one who like understands sports fatigue championship. Right. I like dynasties. I think they're good for sports. Whatever, come at me. Yeah, I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan. Like,
as am I.
Deal with it. They were terrible for 50 fucking years. And are going to be for another 50. So like, no, I think dynasties are generally good for sports. Sports needs villains, right? Like, it's all that stuff. Chiefs Eagles. I think this is fun from what we're going to see on the field. We'll get into some of the Eagles stuff, and were the Eagles the most deserving team in the world to get to the Super Bowl? I don't know, maybe not. But that doesn't take away anything from what I think is going to be a fun matchup.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like Kansas City's defense going up against that Eagles offense, and especially if you want to be more specific, that defensive line for Kansas City going up against that offensive line for the Eagles, like that is going to be an unstoppable force against an immovable object right there when we 2 weeks from now. Like I can't wait. I can't wait. But I do do agree like that. Like I will say I'll be a little bit more towards the I'm not a big fan of dynasties. Like, I do like the way the Chiefs are turning this thing into a dynasty. Like, the one thing that I love about the Chiefs dynasty versus the Patriots dynasty is that, like, Boston already has so many championship winning teams. And I don't need to see another championship winning team from that city win another title. So with Kansas City, you look at Kansas City. The Kansas City only has the Royals, and the Royals are not particularly that like all worldly.
Hey, that's World Series champion Ned Yost you're talking about right there.
Oh my gosh,
Milwaukee Brewers legend.
So it's kind of fun, and even the same thing with Philadelphia. Like Philadelphia too, like they're a sports town, but they haven't won many championships. Like we talked about this in our last show. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to talk about this in 2 weeks. I want to talk though about Buffalo because Josh Allen, man, 0-4 in playoff games against Patrick Mahomes. Dude, I don't understand how Patrick Mahomes or how Josh Allen can get into this spot, and every single time it's the same result. He loses in the most brutal way possible. And just once again for the Bills, like, are they ever going to find a way to get over the hump against Kansas City? Like, this probably like was the best team to beat Kansas City. They beat him in the regular season. They beat him not only in the regular season, they beat him handily in the regular season.
Yeah.
And throughout the postseason, they played really well. They had their moments where they, looked really good and they looked like a Super Bowl winning team. And you look at Josh Allen, he's playing at an MVP type level. But then you get to the Chiefs game and he struggled. Like, there were a lot of times in this game where he struggled. Like the opening drive, like multiple times, almost could have thrown a pick to the Chiefs defense and didn't. And just, making some plays that were just a little bit risky, but still, enough to where you're like, oh my goodness, what a play. And they still lose. I mean, just it's the same thing with Buffalo. Like every single year, dude. Like, and I'm just trying to figure out who is the Indianapolis Colts to who is the Peyton Manning to, the Tom Brady.
This kind of thing did come to mind for me. What you're going to get there, and we're starting to stack up legacy because these two guys have been in the league long enough now to where we should really start having serious conversations about that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has been a starter now since 2018. So that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 7th season as a starter. Josh Allen, I think maybe has one more season as a starter under his belt. And it makes you think about the fact that like Drew Brees never won an MVP, right? Is this going to be the same kind of thing where, man, we're going to look back and Josh Allen never got to a Super Bowl. Same thing with Marino. Marino at least got to one.
Yeah.
But,
he had the misfortune though of running into a really great like dynasty in the Niners, sadly.
Right. So I get it for all the laughing about our good friend of the show, Jack Goods. Like, I can't imagine. I've seen. I mean, us as Packers fans, we've seen the other side of it as felt like Aaron Rodgers just ran into the brick wall that was the Niners again and again and again and again. I've seen plenty of Minnesota Wild fans growing up around us who bemoan running into the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2010s over and over again. It's got to be brutal. Like I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, those two teams were a little more evenly matched. Bills and Chiefs were both 11-6 in the 23 season, whatever it was.
You mean like was that 23 or was it 21.
23, they were both 11-6.
Yeah, that was I think probably the best chance, and that was the first time Mahomes had played on the road.
Yeah, but he's undefeated on the road in the playoffs. So,
oh my god!
I don't know that I can look at this Bills team and be like, tear it down, deal with something else. Clearly, there's defensive issues here. We knew that coming into the year. We knew the secondary was suspect. They never proved anything more than what we thought they could be at the beginning of the season. I think we knew that it was going to be a shaky proposition at best. Not that it was going to necessarily be the Achilles heel of this team. Maybe it was in this game, but there was also, like you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes' legs. He was escapable in this game. And when it just felt like Buffalo was a half step behind, getting just enough pressure, and defensive backs can only cover for so long, I think clearly Buffalo needs an upgrade in talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's some investment to be made there. But otherwise, still, I'm looking at this team and just thinking they're not far off. They're not. They're just happening to run into just an absurd juggernaut.
I agree. Like, I mean, it's just tough. Like, it's tough when you know that there's a team that is just an absolute offensive juggernaut. We've seen this so many times throughout history, throughout the NFL. Like even the Green Bay Packers, like our team, have run into a juggernaut before back in the 90s with the Cowboys. So it is tough. You know, it is tough when like you are one of the best teams, one of the top teams in the league, and you have a team that is a Super Bowl winning team, and you have that ability to go in and think every year is a year where you can make the Super Bowl. But then there's that other team on the other side that's just consistently better than you. And it's tough. And the other thing is too with Buffalo, like they're off, like remember at the beginning of the year when we talked about this, they had to gut their roster.
Yeah.
So the fact that they had to gut their roster and make the AFC Championship game still, I mean, that's
impressive.
That's pretty impressive.
The other thing, and I know this is kind of my hobby horse that I come back to over and over again, is like the QB contracts of it all.
Yeah.
Not that either of these guys are at risk of leaving. That's never going to happen. But Patrick Mahomes got signed on the most bargain bin deal of all time because he was signed in 2020 when there was all this cap uncertainty, and he signed a 10-year deal. He signed a 10-year deal through 2031, which means that the Patrick Mahomes quarterback deal is going to look like more and more and more and more of a bargain as every single year passes. It's bananas. I get that he has had a massive cap hit these last few seasons, or he is in the midst of where that contract is in its biggest cap hit right now in 66, 68, and 68.8 million, or 64.8 million these next 3 seasons. And so that's almost part of why, like, you look at it and you're thinking, man, they got him locked up on a cheap deal. The biggest cap hit that he's going to have starts right now. Maybe this was their best chance at getting him. You almost feel like they got to get him next year. Otherwise, like,
it's just never going to happen.
Absent a restructure, like, Patrick Mahomes is going to be locked in to the most bargain bin NFL contract of all time. Like, it's seriously. Because after that, in 2028, his cap hit goes down to $32 million.
Oh my goodness. That's not even that.
It's not even 10% of the total cap.
Huh. Wow. Whoever does the numbers for the Chiefs really deserves a raise or a promotion, because that's menacing work right there.
And the thing is that it probably gets restructured around
Mhm.
then, right? Because there's a ton of money in there that needs to get figured out, because at that point in time, like, Mahomes isn't making a crap ton of money. It's still, I mean, he's still making a crap ton of money, but just not as much as he's making right now. But yeah, it's rough.
You also have to look ahead to, like, Travis Kelce at some point is going to retire. Chris Jones at some point is going to retire. Andy Reid at some point is going to retire. Like, things could change, but yeah, like next year's a big year for the Bills. I think they gutted their roster. They, I think we'll have a little bit of cap space to do some work in free agency. The draft, they got to draft well. They have to draft well. This is a big year for them if they want to compete with Kansas City and compete in the AFC. Josh Allen's window is, I don't want to say running out of time, but this first Super Bowl window for them is slowly closing, and they're going to have to go into a rebuild at some point with that whole team.
The Bills have $2.5 million to gut just to get cap compliant.
Oh, so no, that's not good.
Yeah.
So they'll have to really work the draft. They'll really have to work the draft and hope that they can find something. Just, I think the one rule should be don't trade with the Chiefs, don't trade with Kansas City, because that's happened way too many times and it's been bad luck on their end.
Yeah, they still have their first round pick. They have 2 seconds. You have 3/4. So, like, there's stuff to do there. There is capital to work with. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's rough out there. And you almost feel worse for Buffalo than you even do for Baltimore, right? Because Buffalo's been on the doorstep more often,
multiple times.
Even though I think Baltimore has probably had the better teams, in the aggregate over the past few seasons. But Buffalo has just died at the hands of the same villain over and over again. And that's got to just make you feel some type of way.
And the only other team that has been able to beat both of those teams are the Cincinnati Bengals, who didn't get into the postseason. And I would have loved to see Burrow and Mahomes, because I feel like if that were to happen, we would have had some bananas stuff go on. So
win game.
All right. Yeah. All right.
They're letting 14 freaking teams into this thing. Like, win games. Give me a break.
All right, second down. Let's jump into the NFC Championship game. The Chiefs Bills game was incredible. This game was a snooze fest and a beatdown from the minute the Eagles got the ball. It was pretty much over. Like, first touch, Saquon Barkley ran for a touchdown, and after that, pretty much over. 55-23 final score. That is the most points scored in a conference championship game. Oh, golly, the Eagles, man. Like, I think Detroit should have been in this game. Like, this was clearly a Detroit.
Don't turn the ball over 10,000 times.
Yeah, but then you also look at it and it's like, should have Detroit been in this game? Because the Commanders turned the ball over so much in this game. They turned it over 4 times. And,
what happened in the wild card round?
Yeah. And
also, turnover to open the game.
Turnovers killed them.
One that the Eagles came out of the pile with the ball, even though Keyshawn Nixon was clearly down.
And it happened again.
They gave the ball to the Eagles. But then in this game, we had a player clearly down. One team came out with the ball at the bottom of the pile, but that team was not awarded possession. So very weird how that rule works, I guess. Or it doesn't work, depending on the circumstances.
It's so stupid. But I just, like, this game, like, to it frustrated me because like the Commanders had so many chances. I mean, they at one point they cut the lead down to single digits, and then it just all fell apart for them. Like they just turned it over so much, and you can't do that in these type of big games. Like it's so brutal for the Commanders. Now for the Eagles, like it was like, man, that you couldn't have asked for a better championship game than what the Eagles were gifted, or an opponent that what the Eagles were gifted, because holy cow, man, did they capitalize on those turnovers. They 4 turnovers in this game. I think they scored on all 4 of them, or at least got points off of all 4 of them. And oh boy, like that Eagles defense is maybe legit. Vic Fangio is starting to look like Vic Fangio again, which look out rest of the NFL. Like he's a scary defensive coordinator to go up against with the way he dials his defenses up.
Yes, you are correct, by the way. The Commanders fumbled 3 times. Each of those turned into touchdowns by the Philadelphia Eagles. An interception, which turned into a touchdown for the Philadelphia Eagles, and 1 turnover on downs, which turned into a touchdown for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good Lord.
I mean, you even take that away, right? Just like the offense didn't do enough. If you look at a conference title game drive chart across the end of the first and into the second half, these are the results of the Commanders' drives in this game. Philly kicks it off, and Washington fumbles on the kick recovery, so that turns into nothing. A field goal drive by Washington, then the second half, 3-and-out punt, touchdown, but then fumble, turnover on downs, interception, turnover on downs. That's how you end the game. Like that's just, it's just not enough, regardless of what Philly was able to do. But what Philly was able to do was incredibly impressive. When I say that, though, I am torn, because when you watch back some of the runs from Saquon in this game, the big Saquon runs, it's like, oh man, here goes Saquon. He's breaking tackles. Blah, blah. He's not really breaking tackles.
Commanders defense really sucked.
Woof.
They sucked.
Like
from the first carry, they couldn't get him down to the ground.
It's not even arm tackles. Like I don't even know what you call some of it. It's as the game is about blocking and tackling. That Commanders defense, not about tackling. Not about tackling. Not about trying to tackle. Not about faking tackling. Just brutal to watch. It's one thing to watch, Marshawn Lynch rip off a big run and in the Beastquake, where he is just shedding guys off. This wasn't even, as much as Saquon has been dominant, as much as Saquon has been fun to watch, this wasn't even that in a lot of cases. It was just, man, the Commanders, they're ready to go back to Cancun. They were done. We've won a couple playoff games. I'm satisfied. Let's go home.
Yeah, they were bad, dude. Like from the first carry, they had 4. There was 4 guys who had a chance at him, and he somehow just bounced off of them. Like,
That's what it was. Didn't break a tackle. Just like bing bong. Gone.
I will be curious how Kansas City plans to stop Saquon, because that's going to be the focal point of that entire Eagles offense. It's going to be the focus on how to stop the Eagles offense, because once you stop the Eagles offense from running the ball, you got to rely on Jalen Hurts, and that's a pretty easy task.
Yeah, making this team one-dimensional, like despite the fact that Jalen Hurts, he averaged 7.7 yards per pass in this game.
Mm-hmm.
clearly, I mean, one, we know this Commander's secondary is terrible. Two, when you have Saquon running free and you are selling out to stop that, like that opens up everything that the Eagles want to do on the outside for these receivers. And so they're going to need guys like Chris Jones to get a big push up front, it just to give themselves a fighting chance here. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, look, if Saquon can carry this team to a Super Bowl victory, renaissance for the running backs, man.
Oh yeah, and which, oh gosh,
you got two really good running backs on this team in Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. So I'm joking.
I was gonna say, put some respect off Kenneth Gainwell, though. Like, don't be sleeping on Kenneth Gainwell.
Noah, did the Packers make a misstep by allowing Oren Burks to walk to the Eagles?
Bro, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on that. I am so man. Every time I saw Oren Burks make a play, I was like, why couldn't he have done this in Green Bay? Like, he had so many years to try and get himself together, and he could never. And then he goes to the Eagles, and yes, of course, like Casey Hayward, like Micah Hyde, it's the same freaking thing. They do way better, and I get very pissed about that. Like, oh, so stupid.
In 3 games, speaking of Eagles linebackers, we can talk about the second best linebacker on this.
Zach Bond?
Zach Bond, yes. Second to Oren Burks.
Former Badger Zach Bond.
He has 26 tackles this postseason.
It's pretty good.
9 solo tackles, 2 fumble recoveries. What the heck, man? He had 12 tackles in this game.
Beast out there. Well, and just even 2, the whole season with Zach Bond, like the whole season, like he's been phenomenal. Like they signed him. I think they signed him to a 1-year deal, like a 1-year contract. Like they signed him to a pretty small deal just to be a special teamer. And he used to be an edge rusher in New Orleans, and they kick him to inside, and he's a first team All Pro by the end of the season. Like that's unheard of by some standards. Like you sign a guy a 1-year contract as an edge rusher, you move him to inside, and by the end of the season, he's first team All Pro.
Noah, he has 151 total tackles this year for the Philadelphia Eagles. In his 4 seasons in New Orleans, I want you to guess the total number of tackles he had across those 4 seasons. He has 151 total tackles this year for Philly.
I want to say somewhere in the double-digit range. So I'm going to throw out like 55.
Jesus, dude. Put some respect on his name.
I know.
55. 88. Okay. 88. 88 tackles in his first 4 seasons. 4 years in New Orleans. He has 151 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah.
I'm curious if he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year, because he's been balling out all season. Like it's been consistent all season.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, he only has 3.5 sacks this year, and I think that voters typically end up looking at those like sack and interception numbers big time, and so I'm not sure if there's going to be enough like statistical production there to do it, but I'm not sure, because who are the finalists for this? It's Zach Bond, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Pat Surtain, and TJ Watt.
I'm telling you, I think out of all of them, like Zach Bond has the best chance to win it. That's in my personal opinion. If I'm a voter for that award, I vote Zach Bond. Like I don't think TJ Watt had that good of a year. I don't think Myles Garrett had that good of a year. Trey Hendrickson,
TJ Watt had 11 and a half sacks this year, man. He had that good of a year.
But then Myles Garrett, I don't know why Myles Garrett's on that list. He must have
Because he's bananas.
that is true. Anyone at last year.
Myles Garrett had 14 sacks this year.
Oh, okay.
This is the 1, 2, 3, 4th season in a row that he's had 14 or more sacks in a year. And he's had double-digit sacks every year that he's been in the league, except for his rookie season when he had 7.
And that brother's stuck in Cleveland. Just
that he is.
Just throw that out there.
That he is.
Yeah.
Nobody has unbelievably gaudy tackle numbers like Zach Bond is for the people who are, up for this award, but that's because the other guys like this are edge rushers, right? They're not going to have tackle numbers like that. Patrick Tan's not going to have tackle numbers like that. So I don't know. I could see from a footballer's perspective, from let's turn on the film, watch tape, who's doing their job best of anybody in the league. I can see an argument for Zach Bond. It is really hard to not fall in love with the ridiculous sack numbers and the negative plays forced by guys like TJ Watt and TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, though.
Yeah. They're the ones that are more attractive of a number than tackles. So give credit to the Eagles. Won the NFC. Second time under Nick Sirianni that they're going back to the Super Bowl. Another thing, too, Nick Sirianni's not had a losing season in his tenure as the Eagles coach. He's not had a losing season.
But for some reason should have been fired last year.
Yeah, I guess Eagles fans really wanted him gone. Don't know why. So we'll stick with the Eagles here. Let's jump to third down. And I want to talk about Saquon Barkley because he's had a phenomenal year for the Philadelphia Eagles. 2005 rushing yards, should have had the single season rushing record in the bag in the last game of the season. Didn't do it. And not only has he been good in the regular season, but he's been incredible in the postseason, rushing for 442 yards, and he's averaging 6.7 yards per carry. That's more. He's rushed for more average yards per carry in the postseason than he has in the regular season. He averaged almost 5.5 yards per attempt in the regular season. We're looking at the MVP race. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, I think they've had good seasons, but Saquon Barkley's season doesn't get talked about enough with the way that, he instantly came in from the Giants, which by the way, they're still stupid, and was able to change this Eagles roster and able to elevate this Eagles roster to a whole nother stratosphere. And he could have easily had the single season rushing record by the end of the season. If he did, he would have probably been the front runner, but it's hard for me to not look at the numbers and say, does he deserve it? Because, you look at it too, Kedrick, there hasn't been a non-quarterback player to win the MVP since Adrian Peterson in 2012. And since that time, it's been all quarterbacks. And this is kind of one of the first years where there isn't really a quarterback out there that has these gaudy numbers. And when you look at Saquon, the numbers are pretty dang impressive, and they're impressive enough to where you say he should be the MVP. He should at least get a vote to be the MVP.
Sure. I don't necessarily know that I have a hot take on who should win the MVP race this year. I think you're right that the quarterbacks are largely unimpressive to me so far. We're talking about Josh Allen as an MVP candidate for kind of his overall production, but he has fewer than 30 touchdown passes this year, right?
Mhm.
Like that hasn't been that impressive. The only quarterbacks in the league who have thrown at least over 40 have been Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, who led the league with 43. I think I'm somewhat more impressed just by Lamar, where that offense as a whole has been more dynamic. But I think my problem with that argument is I think it's because they have another incredibly dynamic talent beside him at running back in Derrick Henry as well. And I think if I'm taking any one of those duos together, I'm probably taking Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry over Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. And so to me, I think maybe that makes just what Saquon has done this year all the more impressive in comparison to what Derrick Henry is doing beside Lamar Jackson as well. It's the big runs for Saquon. It's his usage on a down to down basis. It's the fact that he, despite carrying the ball almost 345 times in the or almost 350 times in the regular season, 345 times, only fumbled twice all year. That's really impressive. I completely understand the argument for him there. And I don't know. You're right. I don't know if there's anybody who's been more valuable. I guess you can make the argument for Josh Allen. If you're just making the argument, who among everybody else, who has been the most valuable player to their team all year? I think maybe Josh Allen holds that up there, where if you take Josh Allen off the Bills, what the hell are they? Like,
Well, they got Mitch Trubisky.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I don't think anybody has. I know this Eagles team was a playoff team last year. They were a wild card team last year, but they really faltered down the stretch. I don't know that there was any one-to-one addition or one-to-one elevation of play across any team in the league, any player in the league that has done more than Saquon Barkley to elevate the play of his team as a whole, elevate the stature of their team as a whole.
Yeah. The offense, like they had a struggle. They struggled. I mean, like, what was it? A 4-game losing streak to close the season out. They were in a loss, including a loss in the playoffs. And then the next season, they just go ballistic after getting Saquon Barkley, which again, the New York Giants, I still can't believe they let this man leave. It just, but like you look at it like this year, like the reason of why it's called the most valuable player. You said it perfectly. The reason why it's called the most valuable player is because who has been the most valuable. And if you look at the numbers and say who's the most valuable, it could be 1A, 1B with Josh Allen or Saquon Barkley. I mean, Saquon Barkley is kind of the sole reason for this team getting to a Super Bowl this year.
I think you can make the argument if you're going to make the Saquon Barkley argument. I think you have to do it in context of what Derrick Henry did, though, too, which I think cuts against Saquon a little bit, depending on how you look at it. Because yes, I would take the duo of Lamar and Derrick Henry, but down to down, Derrick Henry was better. He carried the ball 20 fewer times in the season, but has 2 more runs of 20 plus yards than Saquon Barkley does. Has 9 more first downs than Saquon Barkley does. And has 3 more touchdowns than Saquon Barkley does. And some of that is, okay, where do you cut the number? Because Saquon does have 2 more runs of 40 plus yards, and Saquon only fumbled twice to Derrick Henry's 1 or 3 times. So like, I don't know. But I think overall, those were clearly the 2 best backs in the league this year. And I don't know that when is the last time I guess besides Derrick Henry, right? On a winning team, have we really had, well, I guess Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. I'm trying to like formulate lately, like, oh, okay, when did we have a really dominant team with a really dominant running back? And it's like, yeah, they've been there. We've had some difference makers, and there's just something about these two backs that is just different, where it's a little more ground and pound at you in your face. That is a return to a certain type of football in the circular nature of this sports evolution.
that a lot of times, we're fine with seeing, and especially with the running backs.
Yep.
And moving forward too in this draft class, like when we get to the offseason too, like this is a deep running back draft class this year. So the running back position will be very valued after what Barkley and Henry and Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon did this season for their teams. So fourth down, we got 10 minutes left and we're going to wrap up. Head coaching hires. Oh, man. Another year has gone by. Teams have fired their coaches and teams have now started to hire their coaches. And there's only one more head coaching vacancy left, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Since this show is being recorded on a Tuesday, we won't know who the Saints will hire yet until after this show comes out. But we do have all the head coaching hires so far that have been made by teams, and the list goes like this. The Chicago Bears hired Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. Mike Vrabel goes to the Patriots. He was on Cleveland's staff this year as a consultant. Liam Cohn, of the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pete Carroll going to the Las Vegas Raiders after being a teacher at USC for quite a while, and now going back to coaching in the NFL. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, going to the New York Jets, and Brian Schottenheimer, the OC of the Cowboys, getting promoted to the head coach. Let's start with the best head coaching hires, because I think we both have a lot to say about what the worst one is, and we both know what the worst one really much is. If you look at that list, you probably know, which is pretty obvious. But best head coaching hire of this coaching cycle so far, Kedrick.
I know you're going to say Ben Johnson, so I'm going to make an argument for Liam Cohen, actually.
Yes.
Which I think is probably second best here, I think, pretty clearly. If you're not a fan of Ben Johnson, or you just don't think that's going to work for whatever reason, I would say take a look at Liam Cohen. We professed our love for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense near the tail end of this season, and that all came on the heels of, in this offseason, us asking the question of, can Baker Mayfield have another great season like this again, or like he did a season ago, despite not having Dave Canales in his ear as the guy who has resurrected a few quarterback careers himself. Now Baker Mayfield's put multiple seasons together of really good play. Like we said, only one of three quarterbacks in the league to throw for 40 or more touchdown passes this year, and did that under the stewardship of Liam Cohen. And that wasn't just the only thing that the Buccaneers offense did well. They were also great on the ground. Some of that, rookie running back, Bucky Irving. But the Bucs had to withstand some tough waters throughout the season as well. You'll remember they lost their top two wide receivers to injury for a short period of time in the middle of the season. And for him to go to Jacksonville, have the Jags in position to have a second chance at another quarterback whisperer coach, which obviously that's what Doug Peterson was there to do the first time with Trevor Lawrence. Now you're hoping to, strike there again. If you're not going to get a guy like Ben Johnson there, who I think you see maybe a little bit more as a schematic savant than just a pure quarterbacks coach, then Liam Cohn is exactly who you want. And knowing, I think that there is a lot of just straight up talent there to take advantage of in Trevor Lawrence. You say, okay, let's get someone who can coach him up and make him what he needs to be and get that offense in Jacksonville moving. I'll be fascinated to figure out what it is they do with the rest of the staff. But I think that's a hire that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I can get with you. I can get on board with that with Liam Cohen, just because of what he did in Tampa Bay. I mean, just the phenomenal job that he did with this offense this year. Baker Mayfield elevating himself. I mean, you look at Baker Mayfield, like Baker Mayfield's going to be on his 8th offensive coordinator since coming into the league, which is insane to think about and bonkers. But
the hard part of that about that Jacksonville job is that they have way more work to do on defense than they do on offense.
Yeah.
Like, you need to get that offense with all people rowing in the right direction, but that defense is just bad. And so as an offensive head coach, his tenure might be defined by making the right defensive coordinator hire, which could be tough for him. Or, they're will they, won't they, fired, not fired, fired GM, getting the right defensive personnel now that Trent Baalke is out the door.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. Like, the biggest thing about this whole situation, why Liam Cohen is here, is because of Trent Baalke and like how unattractive that job is. Like, Trent Baalke is a horrible, horrible like person as a GM. Like, he's the reason that he sent Harbaugh out the door in San Francisco and comes to Jacksonville. And again, it's the same issue in Jacksonville. And so looking at it, like, yeah, like nobody wanted to come into this Jaguars team and have Trent Baalke as their general manager, because he's had some really god awful drafts and he likes to be power heavy. And you look at it like Robert Saleh, like I think that was a big name that was thrown around. Robert Saleh, Kellen Moore, those guys wanted to come in. Ben Johnson, the big thing with all those coaches, they wanted to come in and be the head coach. The problem was Trent Baalke was the issue. So finally, Shad Khan finally, sacked up and decided to fire him. And now you look, Liam Cohen comes in and a new GM is going to come in. And I think that's perfect. They need a new GM. They need a fresh start. And his first task is going to be, as a GM, getting this defense in the right direction. And Liam Cohen's task is getting a defense coordinator going in the right direction. So I can get on board with the Jaguars hire. But obviously the best hire out of the whole cycle is Ben Johnson. I mean, like, the Bears, they're ready to go compete for a playoff spot. I mean, they're ready to go compete for the division. And I know that as a Packers fan, I might be wrong on that, because the Bears have always just sucked. They've won the offseason Super Bowl every single year, and then it ends up when the regular season starts, they suck. But the big thing here with Ben Johnson is he's got Caleb Williams, who had some really good numbers last year. Will this offense, go to another level with Caleb Williams, or will we see some regression? That's kind of the big question mark. But I could get down with either one of those. I think both hires make the most sense, make it the best hires, because the quarterbacks are there. And if I were to take a slight edge on, if I were to say who has the better job, it probably would be Jacksonville. The problem is that defense is just so bad. They were so bad last year. They were terrible last year. And it's just like, man, you got Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence didn't even finish the season last year. They had Mac Jones finishing the season. Like, that's how bad that team was.
There'll be plenty of time to talk about this in the near future, but I have been hearing year over year that it's just the offensive line. It's just the offensive line. It's just the offensive line for the Bears. Justin Fields finished with the third worst in the league sack percentage on dropbacks last year. That was his Achilles heel, was Justin Fields could not avoid being sacked, was sacked constantly. Third worst percentage in the league last year after he had like a historically terrible year the year prior.
Yeah.
So this year, to their credit, to come off of that 10.63% sack percentage, third worst in the league, the Bears improved to the third worst in the league sack percentage by their quarterback, Justin Caleb Williams, at a 10.79% sack percentage. So like, yeah, I'm unconvinced on the Caleb Williams thing so far. I think the Bears may just have gotten themselves a new quarterback with the same exact defect. So nice.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll wait with bated breath. But if anybody can figure it out, and if anybody can figure out a defective quarterback, Ben Johnson looks like the man. So.
Yeah. That's the one bright spot. Now let's talk about the worst head coaching hire, because out of all these, it's pretty glaring what the worst head coaching hire is. And are you going to be in the same boat with me with this? But I'm curious who you're thinking what the worst hire out of this cycle is.
I don't know that I totally get the Mike Vrabel thing. It's not my actual choice, but just to give some short comments on these other guys, I don't know that I totally get the Mike Vrabel thing. I don't think he's really turned any quarterback into anything, and I think that's clearly what the Patriots need. I think that maybe Vrabel is set up though for a perfect position, given like what we talked about earlier of this little bit of a running back renaissance that we have. I do understand that Vrabel is a defensive head coach, but like he it's always been the ground and pound thing with him. And I don't know if that's just from having Derrick Henry, whatever. I don't know. We'll see there. Aaron Glenn with the Jets probably won't work out because it's the Jets. Pete Carroll, I'm curious. How much does he have left in the tank?
He's 73.
Yeah.
73.
I just don't know how much he has left. And then Dallas. They play coy with like it's just what this is all like whatever about Brian Schottenheimer, right? And I think you and I agree on that, right? Is that what we say here isn't even a reflection necessarily on Schottenheimer.
No.
It's the process.
It was just a terrible process.
What happened here? They do will they won't they for weeks with Mike McCarthy, choosing whether or not to bring them back, and ultimately seeming like they make the non-decision to just like very quietly let him walk at the end of his expiring contract.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do an interview process for anybody and end up promoting the non-play calling offensive coordinator of the head coach they just pseudo fired. That is not good. I almost feel bad for Cowboys fans. Almost.
Oh.
I feel bad for Chrissy, not anybody else.
Oh, you don't feel bad for your for Eileen's family?
Hell no.
I hope she's not right next to you when you say that.
She's not.
Okay. Yeah, this was a bad, like, this was bad all around. Like, this just reeked of bad. Like, props to Jerry Jones, though. I give credit to Jerry Jones for being able to figure out who his head coach is for at least the next.
Has he figured it out, though?
And he probably still hasn't.
Have you seen though that like
Oh my gosh.
he was asked like how did this happen, and he went on this nonsense rant about nothing and started tearing up. Like from a human perspective, I feel bad for Jerry Jones because I think he's
Lost his touch.
yeah, I think things are not well there. And you can't just force him out. But now it is causing problems with the NFL's most valuable brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, it's almost kind of eerie that it's the same situation that the Cowboys had back in like the 80s. Like when they went from the 80s to the 90s, where like the franchise, with Tom Landry, like Tom Landry overstayed his welcome for the Cowboys, and the owner was looking to sell, and he sold it to Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones was able to turn that franchise around. And now here we are, almost a full circle moment. The Cowboys suck, and they haven't been back to a Super Bowl since the 90s. Like they're the only team that has not been back to a Super Bowl. Other than like, yeah, they're the only other team that hasn't been back to Super Bowl. The only other team that has not, in their own conference, been back to the NFC Championship game. And you look at Jerry Jones. I mean, he's had good success in drafting players. I mean, he's had some Hall of Fame players come through there, some future Hall of Fame players. You look at that O-line that Dallas has had for so many years. It's been incredible. You look at the defense. They've had some great players come out of the defensive side. But now you just look at this team. And we said this at the beginning of this season, is like, this team needed a rebuild. Like, they needed a rebuild. They were not going to be a team that was going to compete whatsoever. And here we are, fast forward. Now we're in a situation where, we hired the non-play calling OC as our head coach after we had a head coach that probably shouldn't have got fired. They should have at least given Mike McCarthy maybe one more year at it and see if he can turn it around.
Well, at the point where you didn't fire him earlier, your decision was made for you.
And it was clearly
just bring him back. And so I'm going to read you the Jerry Jones quote I was referencing before, because I think it goes to show like why there wasn't anybody else for this job. Because I think there are serious problems. So this is via RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys and SB Nation. Jerry Jones on hiring Brian Schottenheimer. There's a long pause, and then Jerry Jones starts speaking and says, "In the almost 35 years that I've been involved with the Dallas Cowboys, I've only missed one Super Bowl, 35 years, and I think I missed one combine in 35 years. At the NFL, over the last 4 or 5 years, the NFL, we want to come in a day early so that we can visit with prospective coaches for the future of my team and any other teams. In 35 years, I don't think I've ever visited with a coach, but what in my heart and mind, I wasn't having an interview. I don't think I've ever had a coach visit with me that wasn't prospectively thinking maybe someday our paths might cross. I've been around a lot of coaches. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be a coach, except I wanted to live better than I thought coaches lived." It's nonsense. It doesn't go anywhere.
That makes no sense.
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
Anywhere. He's crying. Like it's
dude,
not good.
That's sad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like from a human perspective, I feel bad for him.
Jerry's lost his touch. Maybe it's time to hand over the keys to Stephen Jones. See what he can do there. I mean, it's bad. It's bad, especially with the Cowboys. They're one of the most, they're one of the NFL's most profitable brands. They're one of the most they're the NFL's like franchise. When you say America's team, what's the first thing you think of? The Dallas Cowboys. And it's sad. And it is sad. And it has gotten to this point. And buckle up, Cowboys fans, because this is going to be a long off season, and this is going to be 2025 when September hits. It's going to be a rough regular season when it starts. Like, man, oh man, it cannot get any worse for the Cowboys.
Well, like it can.
As I say that, it can.
I mean, how much longer, given they don't have a GM, how much longer do you let this kind of thing fester before?
Hopefully not much longer. Like I said, they needed to do a rebuild. They needed to start from scratch.
But the problem there is, and this is what we talked about when we had this initial conversation, right? Is that's up to the decision makers there, and clearly based on what we just read. And you know, you never know with the situation. Like, we don't see Jerry Jones every day. Like, maybe he has good days and bad days, whatever. But there is a disconnect to the reality of the situation, I would imagine, and a disconnect with the football people versus ownership that is only going to get wider if things really are bad and presumably get worse over time. It makes me wonder, how long does the league allow this to fester before the Shield starts applying pressure to the Cowboys to, like, hey, you need a succession plan and you need it now.
Yeah, man. Like,
because otherwise you just have indecision, who's running the show, all of these questions that are really bad just from the health of any organization, any organization, like your PTA, right? Anything.
But that's the thing. If we're saying that for the Cowboys, if we should be saying that with the Jets too. I mean, because the Jets have been in the same area too, and they have an owner that's also pretty bad. But
there's a difference between like meddling ownership making poor decisions, and I think what might be going on in Dallas.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Jerry may not want to hear this. I don't think he'll listen to the show, but like, it's time.
You don't think Jerry Jones is listening to this?
I don't think he'll listen to this, but
you're
if he does,
kidding me.
But
I thought we had a direct line. You assured me Jerry Jones was a personal friend and he would be listening to this show.
God, is that what I meant? But I'm just saying, for like Jerry Jones' sake, like, I think a rebuild needs to happen. I think you just need to gut this roster and maybe delegate some things to other people, because like, this Cowboys team is not going to be good next year. They're going to be really, really, really bad, and they need to turn things around relatively quickly. So, but I've said my piece on that. Cowboys fans, you know, man. All right, let's get to bringing home the bacon and let's wrap this show up here. It gives it to the Eagles defense. They had a phenomenal day against the Commanders. 4 turnovers, 2 sacks, held the Commanders to under 99 rush yards. 55 points were scored. And as we said earlier in this show, all their turnovers led to points for the Eagles. Congrats. You guys get the slab of bacon and go on to the Super Bowl. We have no pigskin picks, as we said also earlier in the show. No pigskin picks. So this is the end of our show. Watch Snap the Pigskin at YouTube / Snap
Get on it, Jerry.
Yeah, get on it, Jerry. Like and subscribe, Jerry. And also be sure to follow Kedrick's podcast, the Sconnie Six Pack, as well.
I have heard Jerry Jones does listen to that one.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So from all of us here, I'm Noah Clark, joined by Kedrick Stubris. This has been another edition of Snap the Pigskin.